Well, welcome to a special edition of 42nd Street Pete's Grindhouse. Last week, Aurora Clavel passed away at age 88. She was one of the few women actresses that were in the 1969 film The Wild Bunch. So I thought it was appropriate to re-examine The Wild Bunch at this time because I'm going back to 1969 when this thing came out. And there was a whole bunch of uproar about the violence and everything else that was going on. So I remember it was a Sunday afternoon. I took the bus down to Orange to the Embassy Theater to catch the matinee. After the matinee, I walked to the payphone, called home, told my mother I wouldn't be there for dinner because I was going to stay and see it again. This is the only film that I saw twice in one day. Night of the Living Dead, I went back the next day, but The Wild Bunch is the only film I stayed for a second showing. And it stayed with me. And you got to realize back then they were destroying it. They, ripped it apart. It was crazy. But the whole thing was that this was Sam Peckinpah's masterpiece. This was a film against violence, showing violence, how horrible it was. Because, let's face it, I grew up on these World War II movies and Westerns where basically somebody got shot, they went, and fell over. It's clean, it's peaceful. No, it's not. This is fucking horrible. And Sam meant to show it in that way. Even to the point where he talked to the special effects people and took a real gun, put a fucking steak on a board, and shot the bullet through the steak with the meat flying everywhere. And he said, that's what I want. So they put squibs on actors, front and back, with pieces of hamburger meat mixed into them. The result, as you saw, was fucking horrendous, but it made the fucking point. Now, originally, The Wild Bunch was something that Lee Marvin had come across from a buddy of his, I think his name was James Sickner, about a group of bandits operating, after the Civil War or whatever on the Texas-Mexican border or whatever. Marvin was hugely interested in this whole thing. And of course, him and Sam were drinking buddies, so it was discussed. Well, Sam sort of was over his head in Major Dundee and sort of got a little bit of a blackball there. The blackball continued when he was hired to direct The Cincinnati Kid and made it a little bit racier than they supposedly wanted, so he was let go. So in essence, he was blackballed until he did a TV movie called Noon Wine, which he got many props for, and that led to him being able to direct The Wild Bunch. Well, a lot of it was participated on the participation of Lee Marvin. But Lee Marvin was having second thoughts because he had just done The Professionals a couple of years ago, and it seemed to him that he was going back into the same territory. Plus, he had got an offer through his agent to do Paint Your Wagon for $1 million, him and Clint Eastwood. So him and Eastwood did Paint Your Wagon, pocketed $1 million, and the fucking film bombed. So now Peckinpah was looking for his Pike Bishop. And honestly, if Lee Marvin had been cast, it would have been a given that he would have brought Richard Jekyll aboard as Dutch, because they were buddies in the whole Dirty Dozen thing. So a lot of people were approached and discarded. Robert Mitchum was sort of interested, but he did 5-card stud instead. Charles Bronson was approached, but he said he wouldn't work for a drunk. So William Holden got the nod. So William Holden was cast as Pike Bishop, the head of the gang. Ernest Borgnine, who Sam initially really didn't want because he had visions of McHale's Navy in his head, was cast as Pike's second-in-command, Dutch Ekstrom. Ben Johnson and Warren Oates became the Gorsh brothers. Edmund O'Brien became Old Man Sykes, and Jamie Sanchez became Angel. The bounty hunters were played by Robert Ryan, who was basically out of prison to catch Pike because that was his deal with this railroad guy named Harrigan. The scuzzier bounty hunters were played by L.Q. Jones and Strother Martin, and they're really horribly dirty, vicious, nasty fucking people. Matter of fact, everybody in this is involved is nasty, vicious, and cruel. The whole thing was basically that they became the Wild Bunch. They rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, and when William Holden got on the set, he was sitting next to Peckinpah when Peckinpah was directing Strother Martin and L.Q. Jones after the shootout in Starbuck with all the bodies laying around. After he saw how Peckinpah directed the scene, he got up and started walking away. And Sam said, Bill, where you going? And he goes, you going to do every scene like this? And Sam said, yeah, why? He goes, I got to go do my homework. So they all studied on this. They all wanted to make a great film. They were stuck in an isolated area of Mexico where basically the only thing they could do was, party and drink. And L.Q. Jones said they'd be in a bar and there'd be arrests every night. He said roughly he was arrested and jailed 16 times. So there was a lot going on there. The way it was played out, the evil Mexican bandit Apache was played by Mexican actor and director Emilio Fernandez, known as El Indio. He was actually banished from his country for fighting with Pancho Villa forces and set in America, but then came back and became an actor and director. And him and Peckinpah had a lot in common because they were both womanizers and drunks. And Sam did use him in 2 other films, Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia and Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. Sam actually toned down his alcohol use for this. He was just sipping beer, as was Holden, because Holden was another bad alcoholic. The way this whole thing played out, it was against the backdrop of the Vietnam War. There was a lot of protest, there was a lot of uproar, and when the film was finally released, there was a lot of crazy shit going on. But some of the crazier shit was some of the cast members. Jamie Sanchez was not well liked, it seemed, and I've yet to see him in any retrospects or anything like that, even though today he's the only cast member that's still alive. Albert Decker was cast as Harrigan, and that was kind of a weird fucking thing, because originally it was supposed to be R.G. Armstrong, but they couldn't come to terms on it, and they got Albert Decker, who showed up on set with a 13-year-old girl that he was claiming to wed. So Albert was kind of a fucking weird pedophile. And he went back to Los Angeles because his stuff was shot early, and L.Q. Jones seemed to have run into him when he went back to Los Angeles to do something. And a few days later, Decker was found doing a David Carradine, hanging in his closet with a syringe in each arm and wearing lingerie and basically autoerotic, whatever the fuck it was, killed himself. So that was another weird thing that went on. Sanchez was told not to play with a prop gun inside by William Holden and Ernest Borgnine because something could happen, like on Rust, But he did it anyway. The gun went off, and I think that Holden and Borgnine chased him down and beat the shit out of him, but didn't hit him in the face. So there was a lot going on there. So anyway, when this was released, people went out in the alley next to the theater and threw up because of the violence. Sort of reminiscent of what's going on today with a film called Terrifier, where basically the selling point is that it can make you sick and whatever. I got to give that director props though, because he could have went mainstream with a major film company, but decided to go on the indie route and keep it going the way he wanted. So that was his vision. So anyway, the film was panned. Some critics loved it. Some critics hated it. Unfortunately, the studio changed hands in the midstream, and Kinney Parking, if you believe this, bought Warner Brothers. And when Sam was on vacation after doing his cut of the film, they decided to cut it down to make it more runnable for these theaters. So they removed the flashback scenes, an Apache battle scene, a couple other things, a scene with Sykes talking about his grandson Crazy Lee. Strangely enough, when this thing was sold to TV, they took most of the violence out and put in the deleted scenes. So there's still a deleted scene missing where the bounty hunters get killed, and some people said it wasn't filled, and L.Q. Jones said it was, that he blew up 3 squibs, and there's a still floating around of him flying off the horse. Another one of the bounty hunters, Paul Harper, was good friends with Bill Margold and told him that, yes, that scene was definitely filmed. So maybe we're looking for a 4K release of this, which I would hope would find this scene. But again, this is one of the films that was basically completely panned when it came out, and now, how many years later, it's considered one of the best films ever made. Same with Night of the Living Dead, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. All these films that were fucking panned on their release are now considered classics. Go figure. But anyway, I did go to a revival, I had said this before, at the Park Theater in West Caldwell, was running Mean Streets and The Wild Bunch as a double bill. and the place was packed. I was in the balcony seats, and Mean Streets went over, and a palpable tension built up in the crowd, and the credits for the Wild Bunch rolled, and when it came to the part where William Holden goes, "If they move, kill them," directed by Sam Peckinpah, came on, and the place blew the fucking roof off with cheers. So the film had that kind of impact about 10 years after the fact. Still has the impact today. I watched it last night again. I see something different every time. It's a beautiful, brilliant film. But unfortunately, where it redeemed Peckinpah, it sort of damned him in the same way, because people wanted that slow motion dance of death, which became a staple in every action film, every grindhouse film from that point on. And Sam's own personal favorites were Junior Bonner and the Battle of Cable Hogue. The Getaway was a meal ticket. So was The Killer Elite, and maybe Convoy. But honestly, can anybody ever say that they ever saw a bad Peckinpah film? No, he never made a bad film. So sad part was that, being an alcoholic, they were trying to calm him down, and I think it was Warren Oates that introduced him to the wonders of cocaine. That was before anybody realized how bad cocaine was, and Sam became addicted to cocaine. So unfortunately, his life was cut short. Sometimes you wonder what he could have done if he had lived. But this guy was a great director, unfortunately troubled, but some of the stuff he did was really fantastic stuff, and The Wild Bunch stands the test of time as one of the best films ever made. And it's a shame that the only cast member left is Jamie Sanchez, like I just said, Aurora Clavel, whatever the fuck. She was in the scene with William Holden. It was cut out in the flashback. She basically dropped her top and was shot down by an irate husband. So she had worked in Mexico for many, many years, and like I said last week, she passed away at age 88. So there's very few people still left connected with that film. But myself, I like to keep the film in the forefront because it's one of my favorite movies. It's one I always go back to once a year at least. And I'm a huge Peckinpah fan. I admire the guy for what he did, what he got away with, and the way he stood up to the fucking studios. Sometimes he won, sometimes he lost, but it's things that legends are made of. And we don't have anybody like that. Please don't throw Quentin Tarantino my way, because he's nothing but a thief and lifts the stuff. So rest in peace, Aurora Clavel, and the rest of those people who made that film what it is. I mean, L.Q. Jones a couple of years ago passed away. A lot of people from that era are no longer with us, and that was a pivotal era in filmmaking back then, because all these films changed the course of filmmaking after they came out, and today they're all considered classics. So thank you, Sam Peckinpah. Thank you, Ernest Borgnine, William Holden, Edmund O'Brien, L.Q. Jones, Strother Martin, Emilio Fernandez, for making this film what it is, making it down and dirty and gritty the way things were back then. So that's our show for today. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you on the flip side.